Hi, everybody, and welcome back. And thank you for your patience and struggling alongside me through all this nonsense. Today, I'm not going to talk about Harry's book or even about the numerous interviews he has done so far, but I am, in a way, still going to talk about it. If you are a fan of people like the body language guy and Dr. Grande, you will immediately recognize the word baseline because someone like Harry has been in the public eye for most of his life. It is possible for people like Mr. Rosas and Dr. Grande and others to get a very good and clear baseline for Harold or Harry. In other words, they can determine how he normally reacts under different circumstances. Of course, even us as untrained people have picked up a lot over the years. We have seen Harold sulking, we have seen him angry, sad, or even just being a normal happy chappy. We could easily deduce that he was more than a little petulant and immature. It did not need years of study to see that. But as time passed, we got to know Harold and William's body language. And to this day, I can see when William is nervous and or irritable and so forth. But after watching a few of the interviews or pieces thereof, I'm quite confident in saying that the Harold we see now is not the Harold who left England in March 2020. Yes, by then there were already changes in him, but the Harold I saw talking to Tom Bradby is not just a changed man, but a completely different Harold. And I don't mean physically. No, the bum fluff is still on his head. He still has a slit for a mouth and a nose for trouble. But psychologically, this is indeed a whole different person. Now, I don't know how many of you are actually true crime followers or are familiar with a channel called Harsh Reality. Well, whether you are true crime followers or not, I would love for you to take the time and go watch a video he put out in which he talks about his mother's paranoid schizophrenia. I think it is a video everyone should watch, regardless of who you are, where you live, or what your interests are. And I am going to put a link in the description box for you. Now, as some of you may know, as I told the story before in older videos, I was engaged to a man who suffered from schizophrenia. And whatever your opinion may be, as horrific as those episodes can be, as dangerous to the sufferer and his nearest and dearest as it can be, it isn't always, but it can be, it remains one of the saddest things I have ever experienced. Regardless of everything man has learned, the brain still remains a mystery to a certain extent. And although there are many theories, no one could say for certain what causes schizophrenia. Now, I'm certainly not saying Harry suffers from schizophrenia, not in the traditional sense anyway. So, therefore, I'm going to tell you another story from my personal experience. Years ago, and not so many years ago, maybe 5, maybe 6 years ago, I was still working for a company as an estate agent, and a colleague and I were on our way to a course in another town when he received a phone call from a friend of his son's. He asked whether I would mind if we make a detour and quickly stop off at his son's home. I've never met the son before, and when we arrived, I was struck by how attractive the young man was, and within a minute or less I could assess that he was intellectually very bright and very artistic. It also only took me a few minutes before I also recognized that he was very hyper. He rushed from one subject to another. One minute he was showing me his workshop where he was producing the most amazing leather goods, and the next he was walking us into the garden, showing us how he turned a piece of rock solid dead ground into a lush garden through a watering system he designed. And the next, he would sit us down to talk about religion, literally all in about 5 to 10 minutes. I recognized the symptoms and waited for the bubble to burst. My colleague offered to make us coffee, and it was while he was doing so that it happened. His son was still talking about religion when suddenly he looked me straight in the eye and asked me whether I recognized him. Of course I didn't, because I'd never seen him before or met him anywhere. He loosened his hair, which he had in a ponytail up until then, and told me that his father was not his father, but that God was his father. Okay, now I heard that before from religious fanatics, but I knew then that this was different because I had seen the exact scenario play itself out years before with my ex fiance. To make a long story short, this escalated into a full blown schizoid episode within minutes. His father and I tried to calm him down, and as this had never happened before that any of us knew about, I also knew that seeing that he was in his late 20s, it was unlikely that he suddenly and overnight at that age developed schizophrenia. So when we could, we asked when was the last time he ate, etc., etc. And we learned that he has not eaten in a few days and so on. After an hour or two or three, he calmed down and my colleague took us to a restaurant. We ordered food, but while waiting for it, his son started ranting, I can't remember about what, and ran out. By the time we abandoned our food and paid the bill, he was out of sight and missing. We collected my colleague's vehicle and drove up and down but could not find him. We checked his home more than once, and I can't remember whether it was the second or third time that my colleague got the idea to check whether his bicycle was still in the garage. His one vehicle was indeed still in the driveway, and we had by then already established that the other vehicle was with his ex girlfriend who had moved out a couple of months earlier. Well, the bicycle was indeed gone, and at some point my colleague received a call from a friend saying that he was indeed seen riding his bicycle. We raced to where he was last seen. Nothing. Eventually, we found the bike, but not him. And that is when we went to the police station and explained the situation. The police said they will look for him. It was also getting late by then, and we both had families at home waiting for us and worrying about us, and a long way home. My colleague told me and the police that he would take me home, go home himself to change and eat, and then return later in the night or the next morning. Remember, we were actually on our way to a business course, so he was in dress pants and uncomfortable shoes and a tie, and I was in a suit and high heels. They promised they would keep him updated, and we left. We were about 100 kilometers away when they called. They found him. They received a call from a distraught woman saying that he was running into the traffic trying to stop a vehicle and get in. The police had picked him up and was holding him in a cell until his father got there. We turned around and went back. After an hour or so at the police station, it was arranged with the George Hospital to transport him there. There, we had an hour or more wait for a doctor to do a physical checkup before he could be committed to the psych ward. After he was committed, we could leave. But of course, this wasn't the end of it. He was totally paranoid and scared and went from catatonic to reasonably normal to scared out of his wits. He broke a glass door and a framed picture, and his father had to make a plan to find a facility equipped to handle him. My stepdaughter is a practicing psychiatrist in Cape Town, and I called her as a favor. Between them, my colleague and her arranged for the son to be taken to a facility in Cape Town. It was her who first suggested or guessed that he partook of the magic mushroom at some point before that fateful day. And guess what? She was right. He had visited friends in another town the Saturday before, when and where they actually partook of the magic mushroom. To make an already long story short, this attractive, intelligent, talented young man had experienced a severe change in his brain chemistry, which caused permanent damage, and his psychosis includes visual disturbances, disorganized thinking, mood changes, and paranoia. Yes, after a couple of weeks of detox and treatment, he got better and spent a couple of months on a health farm specializing in the treatment of recovering addicts. But although he is now carrying on with a relatively productive life, the damage is permanent, and these episodes will reoccur under stressful situations, etc. The lesson is also that although he admitted to partake and smoke the weed before, it was also the first and only time he used magic mushrooms, and it is the expert's guess that the mushrooms were likely infected with some kind of mold or other fungus. So, why did I tell you this other than to warn people of the use of such rubbish? Well, I watched Harold talking to Bradley Anderson and Michael Strahan of GMA, and it is as clear as day that he suffers from disorganized thinking, mood changes, and paranoia. In one interview, he contradicts himself numerous times, which means disorganized thinking. His mood changes in the blink of an eye. One minute he's calm and self assured, and the next you can see the anger and hatred. And then he switches to being paranoid, blaming absolutely everything on the British press. And I'm not talking about his usual narrative. No, no, no. He's now even blaming the British press for saying they said the royal family and institution are racist, even though the British, American, and world press wrote about the Oprah interview, talking about his drug use. He even blames that on the British press. I can pull each one of these interviews apart for you and prove my point, but I don't think it's necessary. You should get my point by now. The thing is also that due to the Netflix series, we have seen Harold with dilated pupils, and we heard him admit to drug use. And all you need to do is use Mr. Google, and you will find that the use of hallucinogens cause dilated pupils, whether mushrooms or the white stuff or many other things. Then we also have to consider that in cases such as that of my ex-colleague's son, the use of alcohol is strictly forbidden. So even if Harold is not currently partaking of any hallucinogens, he is still drinking and consuming alcohol, as he himself demonstrates in his interview with Stephen Colbert on The Late Show. However, having said this, I'm of the opinion that Harold is still using whatever he is using. At this point, I do not think Harold and his wife can be stopped or that they will stop. Harold, in my opinion, is 100% believing his own stories, no matter how far fetched and ridiculous they may sound to us. I'm of the opinion that Harold has already suffered some brain damage due to his lifestyle choices. Yes, with timely intervention, he may or could get better, but not cured. However, it is also true that as an adult, there are only a few instances under which he can be forced to get treatment. One would be if he is caught with illegal substances on him, and two is if he does anything to endanger himself or others while under the influence or during an episode. Nobody in the free world can be sanctioned unless they are a danger to themselves or others or cause a disruption or nuisance to others. So, how should the royal family deal with Harold and his behavior? I'll discuss the technicalities and the seriousness of it all in a next video. But suffice it to say, even as royalty, there isn't much they can do right now but safeguard themselves, the monarchy, and their country against the onslaught of Harold, his wife, and their following. And the only way they can do that now is to officially distance themselves from the couple and their utterings. I do not agree with those who are saying it will make matters worse and give the couple more ammunition to use against the royal family. No, it does not work that way when you are dealing with someone with mental illness and or some form of brain dysfunction. Harold and Mog won't stop because they want a reaction. They want to fight. And therefore, to verbally react would be the worst thing to do. But the King and the Prince of Wales have to do what they can to distance the institution of the monarchy from the couple in the public eye. And the only way they can do that is to strip those titles, all of them, and remove Harold from the line of succession. Yes, it will require a certain amount of parliamentary support, but I'll explain in my next video why I think they will get it. Privately, as a family, they can do what they want. It is not our place to decide that for them. But officially, there needs to be action if the monarchy is to survive the next few years. Okay, guys and girls, now that's it from me for now. I'll be back here as soon as I can to continue the conversation. So until then, please take good care of yourself. Bye.